the News Channel 5 network. This is Titans Talk.
Hey there, welcome into Titans Talk. I am Steve Lehman, glad to be here, glad to have you here with us on this Monday night on News Channel 5. Plus, the Titans coming off of their bye week and getting set for essentially the second half of the season now. 4-3, tied for first place. You can't ask for much better than that, but at the same time, I think everybody understands that they have to play better from here on out to remain in first place as they move to the important months and towards the finishing stretch of the season. First up on the schedule of the second half, the Baltimore Ravens, Sunday at noon in Nissan Stadium. The first of 3 straight games against the AFC North, the first 2 at home, Ravens and Bengals the next 2 weekends, and then a Thursday night trip to Heinz Field in Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. So an interesting little stretch here as they continue through the AFC North, chance to maybe build a little momentum with the back-to-back home games for the Titans. Today served as a bonus day for Tennessee. They came back, everybody got into the building early. They sort of discussed second half goals. Guys got refreshed, ready to go, and they got out on the practice field for an extra day this afternoon, chance to work on some things that they wanted to do internally, and also an opportunity to get a bit of a head start on Sunday's game plan for the Ravens. Now, some of the things that the coaches looked at heavily over the bye week. Mike Mularkey said they spent a good deal of time offensively looking at the red zone. This was a team a year ago that led the NFL in red zone efficiency. They scored touchdowns on 72% of their trips inside the 20-yard line a year ago. That number is 46% this year through the first 7 weeks. That is a big area where the Titans just simply have to get better if they're going to do what they hope to do with the remaining 9 games of this season. So they spent a good deal of time looking at that. Talked about the running game a bit. Numbers are down there. Not drastically. This is still a good running football team, but it could be better. And they want to try to emphasize that as much as humanly possible. Defensively, not a whole lot to change. Remember, they've only allowed 1 touchdown as a defense in the last 3 games. They would like to get a little bit more pressure. They've had, actually, frankly, a ton of pressure, just not been able to record the sacks in the numbers that they got a year ago. They'd love to get home more in the pass rush, but they feel like they're getting an adequate amount of pressure right now. And then in the secondary, they feel like they've really stepped up. They feel like they have improved greatly. They're now in the top 20 in pass defense after hanging down by 30 for what seems like years now in the defensive backfield. Kevin Byard has become a star, as evidenced by his 3 interceptions in Cleveland. They expect, by the way, to have Jonathan Cyprien back this week, which really helps out. I mean, Denoris Surfsey and Curtis Riley have filled in admirably, but you get him back. Now, all of a sudden, you're starting to talk some depth at that safety position. Logan Ryan's played well. Nodori Jackson's starting to come into his own as well at the other cornerback position. So those are some of the things that they really worked on over the bye week. Some of the updates today, what we got is this is a pretty healthy football team coming off of the bye, which is, I think, the first time we've been able to say that all year. It's probably been undersold how important health has been for this Titans team. And I said the same thing a year ago. Until Marcus Mariota went down in Week 16 last year in Jacksonville, the 15th game of the year, Week 16 of the season, until he went down with a broken leg, and obviously that was a critical injury. They got a ton of people to talk about it around the National Football League. The Titans were a remarkably healthy outfit last year. They just really didn't suffer any injuries that kept guys out for any length of time. And that's how you get to 9-7 from 3-13. That was a very healthy team that made big strides last year. Well, this year, this is a team that has dealt with injuries really from the jump. Corey Davis, also back at practice today. Barring a setback this week, he's going to play on Sunday, and they believe finally he's going to play something close to 100%. Remember, he got hurt on the 3rd day of practice. He missed the entire preseason. He was ready to go in week 1, but maybe a little bit before they should have brought him back. He ultimately got hurt then in the first half in week 2 in Jacksonville, re-injured that hamstring injury, and he's been out the last 6 weeks. So finally now they feel like they're going to be able to get the number 5 overall pick into the fray this week. That's huge news for the offense. Eric Decker dealt with an injury earlier in the year. Delaney Walker's dealt with some injuries. He missed practice today, but they do believe he'll be good and ready to go this weekend. Marcus Mariota, obviously, has dealt with the hamstring of his own since the end of September. He missed the second half of the Houston game, all of the Miami game, which they lost, and then came back and played the last 2 weeks, but clearly was limited. There was no quarterback run game at all involved in the game plan the last 2 weeks. Mike Mularkey essentially called him 100% today. So that is fantastic news for anybody watching that development and wanting to see Marcus Mariota back to his dynamic dual threat self. And then defensively, they've had some knick-knack injuries as well. Cyprien, clearly the most serious on that side of the ball. But again, he's the guy that they believe will be back and ready to go this week. He's really the only big injury on the defensive side of the ball. The only injury to maybe be concerned about right now is Quentin Spain, who's had a little bit of a knee trouble, also turf toe. Potentially he's out this weekend, but that's really the only thing you concern yourself with if you're the Titans injury-wise. So that is very positive coming off of the bye. So where does this team go from here now? 4-3. Tied for first place, but clearly has not played its best football over the last month of the season. They understand that they've got to get better. Coming up on the show tonight, we will preview some of that second half stuff. Jonathan Hutton joined us last night on the Electric Power Company Sunday Sports Central. He'll help us sort of break down where this team is at through 7 games and what has to be better in the second half of the year for them to win this division or for them to get to the playoffs for the first time since 2008. We also want to hear from you guys tonight. As always, phone lines are open here on Titans Talk. 737-7767 is the number, so call us up and be a part of the program. Also, don't forget the NFL trade deadline comes your way tomorrow afternoon, and already tonight we've seen a couple of big deals go down. First, Houston traded Dwayne Brown, the left tackle, in front of Deshaun Watson to Seattle. So he goes there. Seahawks thrilled to get a left tackle to protect Russell Wilson. Brown came back after an extended holdout and finally played in his first game of the season yesterday for the Texans. So it's only one game in front of Deshaun Watson. But my question long term for the Texans is this. Dwayne Brown's the best lineman that you have. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler at left tackle, which is the most important position on the offensive line, especially when you're protecting a young, seemingly franchise quarterback, because Watson has been unbelievable. 4 touchdowns, 402 yards again yesterday. He's now thrown for more touchdown passes in 6 starts than any quarterback in the history of the National Football League. He's thrown for 3 or more touchdowns in each of the last 4 weeks. He's been simply phenomenal. But now you're going to get rid of the best offensive line piece in front of him. That doesn't necessarily mean he's doomed. He obviously is a very mobile guy, and he performed well when Brown wasn't there before this weekend. But long-term, big picture, Dwayne Brown has been their best offensive lineman, and now he's a Seattle Seahawk. And then the other big move that just came down within the last hour or so, the New England Patriots have finally traded backup quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. People have wondered about that for a long, long time. Is he waiting to be the heir apparent in New England behind Tom Brady? Frankly, is Brady ever going to stop playing? He certainly shows no signs of slowing down, even pushing 40 years of age. But Garoppolo finally on the move, traded to San Francisco for a second-round draft pick. For the Patriots, you get something for Garoppolo. Perhaps that trade value was diminishing the longer he sat on your bench. For San Francisco, you get a quarterback that you presumably feel much better about. They then, by the way, released Brian Hoyer this evening. So a big quarterback flop in San Francisco, and we talked about Dwayne Brown and the impact on the Texans. That's obviously something that the Titans will pay attention to by being in the division. But also now, look at San Francisco. That is the Titans' Week 14 opponent out there in Northern California. And almost certainly now, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be the starting quarterback for the 49ers, not Brian Hoyer, and not C.J. Beathard, the Nashville native who started each of the past couple of weeks. So some interesting developments there, maybe more action, bigger action than you sometimes see right about now as we move closer to the trade deadline, which has really become a quiet holiday in the NFL over the last several years. There's just so much information, so much to learn, that oftentimes you don't see big moves around the trading deadline. But this year, a couple big ones tonight with the deadline looming tomorrow afternoon. And also, one other topic, because you guys have wanted to talk about it a ton on this show. But Dwayne Brown, the other interesting thing, and someone just tweeted me this before we went on the show tonight because of the trade, and asked if I thought his role in the Texans' protest over the weekend had anything to do with his trade. I certainly don't have any inside information about that. I think this was a straight-up football trade for all intents and purposes. But Brown became essentially the de facto spokesperson for the Texans as they protested against Bob McNair, the Texans owner, during the national anthem. So once again, a national anthem protest yesterday, widespread by one team, the Houston Texans. Had nothing in their mind to do with the flag or the national anthem, so to speak. They were protesting their owner yesterday for his comments. I want to get to that. My thoughts on that and how this protest has truly jumped the shark. We'll get to that on the other side of this break. We'll also get to your comments on the Titans. What do you think of where they stand right now? 4-3, first place in the division, and where they go from here in the second half. What has to be better in your mind for the Titans to ultimately win this division and get to the playoffs? We want to hear from you tonight. Phone lines open, 737-7767. The number. Stay tuned. Titans Talk. We'll be back right after this.